Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, in this video we're going to speak about Al-Irfah. So Al-Irfah is one of the four possible relations that the noon with a sukoon on it or the tanween can have with other letters. And Al-Irfah is that you hide the noon with a sukoon on it or the tanween. We're going to explain what exactly is meant here by hiding. So for example, when I say ينظرون, technically speaking, I'm sort of hiding the noon there because you're not hearing ينظرون. The original pronunciation would be ينظرون, but I'm saying ينظرون. So you're not hearing the N in ينظرون. So that's what's meant here by إخفاء. We're going to explain when that happens, because as we've covered many times, one of the things that we study in Tajweed is تفاعل الحروف. تفاعل الحروف is the interaction that happens between certain letters when they come adjacent to each other. Okay, so the nun of sukun or the tanween, when they come adjacent to certain letters, there are certain quote-unquote special effects that are going to happen, and from those is al-ikhfa. And we've covered the three others in previous videos, in qalb and al-qalb and al-idgham and al-idhar. So let's explain, inshallah, what al-ikhfa is. First and foremost, you need to understand something, which is that the nun and the meme are made up of two sounds. The nun and the meme are made up of two sounds. There's a mouth sound and there's a nasal sound. And you're going to see how this ties up with what we're talking about. So when you're saying the nun, there's a mouth sound, which is that the tip of the tongue is touching the upper palate. And and the front part of your tongue is coming up and touching the upper palate. That is the mouth part, quote unquote, or the mouth sound that a nun or the nun is comprised of. But there's also a nasal sound in both the nun and the meme, but here we're only talking about the meme. There's also a nasal sound that takes place, which is called the ghunna. And the ghunna is that nasal sound that you hear when you're saying likewise when you're saying but we're only talking about the nun here. So that nasal sound that you're hearing from your nose, the sound, is called the ghunna. So when you're saying the nun, there's a mouth part, which is the tip of your tongue coming up, and then there's also the nasal part. And if I remove the mouth part, I only get the ghunna, the nasal part, which is like So why is this important? This is important because when you're doing ikhfa, what you're doing is that you're removing the mouth part, but you're keeping the nasal sound, you're keeping the ghunna in the noon or sukun or the tanween. So al-ikhfa is that you hide the noon or sukun or the tanween by removing the mouth part or the mouth sound, but keeping the nasal sound, the ghunna. So when I'm saying yanzurun, the mouth part of the noon is gone. The n part is gone. But you can still hear the ghunna. Yanzurun. So that is what al-ikhfa is. Al-ikhfa is that you're hiding the mouth sound of the noon and you're hiding the mouth sound of the tanween. So same thing here. Instead of saying عذابا قريبا, I'm going to say عذابا قريبا. So I'm hiding the mouth part of the noon or the tanween. And that is what al-ikhfa is pretty much. Now the sign of al-ikhfa in the mushaf, for the noon with sukoon, it's that you're going to remove the sukoon from the noon. You're going to remove the sukoon sign from the noon. You're not going to see it. And there's not going to be a shadda on the following letter. So here, as you can see, the noon here, even though technically speaking has sukoon on it, from the sign of al-ikhfa in the mushaf, when you're writing the writing of the Quran, yani, the scholars who write the Quran, when they're writing the rules down, one of the ways that they're going to indicate the ikhfa is by removing the sukun from the noon and not putting a shadda on the following letter. And that's a sign that this noon right here, you're going to do ikhfa with it. That's the sign of it in the mushaf if you look at the Quranic script. ينظرون. For the tanween, the sign is that the two haraka will come back to back. Instead of being on top of each other, they're going to be back to back. Okay, so one after the other, not one on top of the other. Because usually the tanween, you're going to see two fathas on top of each other, two dhammas on top of each other, and two kasras on top of each other. But when ikhfa is happening, the way it's going to be indicating is that the two haraka are going to be placed adjacent to each other, coming back to back. And likewise, the following letter will not have a shadda on it. So here, that's the sign of it having ikhfa. So you're going to say عين جارية, عين جارية. So that is a sign of ikhfa in the mushaf for the sukun and for the tanween. So now the question is, when will al-ikhfa take place? Yani with what letters is al-ikhfa going to take place? So al-ikhfa will take place with any letters other than the ones covered in al-qalb and al-idhar and al-idgham. So we covered that al-qalb is going to happen with the letter ba, meaning that if a noon is sakina or if a tanween is coming before a ba, you're going to do al-qalb. Al-Idhar, which is that you clearly pronounce the letter, you clearly pronounce the noon, you clearly pronounce the tanween, is going to happen if it's coming before any of the throat letters. And Al-Idgham is going to happen with the Yarbanun letters. So any letters that are not included in these three categories, you're going to ikhfa. You're going to ikhfa. And these other letters are a total of 10 letters, which can be memorized with this line of poetry here. صف ذا ثنا كم جاد شخص قد سما ضم طيبا زد في التقى ضع ظالما. So all the red letters here are the 10 letters that you're going to do ikhfa if the noon as-sakina or the tanween is coming before them. So if there's a noon sakina or a tanween coming before a sad or a dal or a tha or a kaf or a jim or a sheen or a qaf or a sin, and the list goes on, then you're going to do ikhfa with that noon or with that tanween. So this is where al-ikhfa is going to take place. And now the last point I want to cover is two things will take place when you're doing ikhfa. And this is important to note to make sure that when you're pronouncing the ikhfa, you're doing it correctly. If you want to make sure that you're doing ikhfa correctly, just remember these 2 points. The first point is that when you're doing ikhfa, you want to hear the ghunna from the nose. Tun, tun. You want to hear that sound from your nose. That's point number 1. Point number 2, which is very important, this is where some people do it wrong, is that your tongue is preparing to say the following letter. Preparation of the tongue to say the following letter. When you're doing ikhfa, your nose is doing the nasal sound, the ghunna, and your tongue is getting prepared to say the following letter. So here it's a dal. So I'm saying tun, and then my tongue is gonna start going close to the makhraj, the point of articulation for the dal. And then when I'm ready to say the dal, I'm going to actually say it. Tunziru, tunzir, tunzirhum, tunzirhum. This is important to note. The tongue is getting ready to say the following letter. Tunzirhum. So to see some practice and some examples, here we have examples of the noon of sukun. منكم أنذرتهم الإنسان منصورون. For the tanween, ماء ثجاجا عاد فأهلكوا عزيز ذو عين جارية. And this, wallah alhamd, is what al-ikhfa is, and when it's going to happen, and how to pronounce it, and the sign of it happening in the mushaf.